Hello, welcome to the next edition of Sweet New List. So I just got back from DC, where I competed in the RC. So hopefully I'm feeling all good. Let's get into these deck lists. So right out of the gate, I have 14 decks pending. I'm gonna divide this up into 3 different videos. Today we're gonna do the aggro decks. I'll do the mid-range decks in a separate video, and then I'm gonna do tempo decks in the other video. So that's kind of how I want to round this out. So that way I'm not just making one gigantic long video. They're all segmented into their own little categories based on what type of deck they are. So first we're going to cover the aggro decks. I got 6 decks to talk about that all 5-0'd within the past week and a half or so. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Let me know down in the comment section which one of these decks you guys like the most. And we'll go from there, and let's get into it. So, right out of the gate, we have Instant and Soul. This deck did pick up a 5-0. It is playing the brand new Clockwork Precautionist. Don't get at me for the not pronouncing the new toy correctly. So the deck does play Bushwhacker, which is a pretty reasonable card in general. We still have our Sirens and our Epic Gears, and NTs, which are very common in this package. I did, however, notice that they trimmed back on Smuggler's Copter. I'm guessing this was trimmed back so they could fit in some Clockworks. Towards the Towers, actually, maybe that's the reason why. Since Rakdos at the time, I'm pretty sure before the RC, Rakdos aggro was everywhere. So they kind of need the extra bit of removal. So cutting back on the copters makes a lot of sense. We have spell pierces to help maybe counter the most important piece. Some pump spell like Monstrous Rage. It's kind of nice to get rid of it to counter the trample. We still have our 4 Ensoul artifacts, 4 citadels to put them on. We don't really have any other ways of making into a creature, but we have Shrapnel Blast to close out the game. We can Gleeful Demolition away the Epicure token or the Siren token, make a bunch of 1/1s, which goes really well with the Bushwhacker. So that is the deck main board wise. Sideboard, we do have some volleys. It does help against spirits as well as a few other options. Not really nothing that showed up in the actual RC. But like Fang showed up a little bit. Essentially that's about it. We have some surges. I'm assuming this is just a reasonable premium removal spell. 4 damage, pretty good against any kind of Rakdos aggro, Boros Heroic, any kind of aggro deck. We have 3 gusts for mono green. We have 2 strokes as a way to fight through control, most likely. So I'm pretty sure even it can get the counterspell that has these surge. If you pay the 5, let me know in the comments to make sure I am thinking this right. But this should be able to counter that if they pay for the counterspell and the draw to discard a card. So that's pretty nice. Teferi is a nice counterspell. Wandering Emperor. Disputes also for control. Then we have our Mage Bane Lizard for the Phoenix matchup, which is, I think it was like the 2nd most played deck at the RC, or maybe 3rd, depending on, no, it was 3rd. Because I think it was Control, then Rakdos, then Phoenix. So like it's still a very important match to cover. So this deck does cover most of the grounds. I'm not sure, I can't remember where they placed, because I know there was like about 20 or so of Izzet and Soul that showed up at the RC. So that is the first deck we have to talk about. Let's get into the next one. So next is this weird mono red deck that has 4 challengers and 4 screaming nemesis. Now with actually Reckless Rage, yeah, I didn't actually get to, I don't think I got to do it in my dinosaur video, but I did play Nemesis with Reckless Rage. That's a nice synergy right there. Doing 2 damage to the Nemesis, which you could redirect it and kill something else, is actually kind of based. So that is actually a very nice synergy. We have some Karizavs as a reasonable card that just a 2-drop. Hard to answer. Makes a 2/1. A couple Bone Crushers. Have a little bit of spot removal against Rakdos Aggro, as well as a 4/3 body. Play with Fire. Monstrous Rage, because it's just, I think, the best pump spell ever printed. We have 2 more Bone Crushers down here to go with it, so to place that, which also kind of helps sprock the prowess, but also, you know, can be a body later on with Kamanu, because there's often many times where you draw a Kamanu after you have your creatures on board. It's nice to have an additional creature just to get that counter on, while also triggering your prowess. We have a 1 Embereth down here as a way to pump our prowess dudes. And of course, 2 of the things can target the challenger, so we can get Valiant and maybe draw an extra card. Sideboard, we have some Chandra's Defeats for Rakdos prowess. Also some Pyroclasms, which I use in my burn deck at the ROC to help against Rakdos prowess as a way to sweep their board before I started deploying my threats, which is actually very critical and important move. Against mid-rangey decks, we do have, and in control, we have Hazoret. Maybe I should have actually put a Hazoret in my board, because I did lose to control, but that's a different story. 2 Running Volleys as a way to fight through, of course, spirits. Also Fang, anything like that. We have 2 Unlicensed Herds for Graveyard Hate for the Phoenix matchup. 2 Cases for control mid-range. 2 Forges also for control and mid-range. And we have a free roll Jangotha, which nothing in our board interferes with Jangotha. So that is the mono red burn, basically, for Pioneer. Actually, I can't even say it's burn, because we don't really actually have a lot of actual bird spells in the deck. We just got Play with Fire and Bone Crusher. But yeah, that's our mono red aggro. Let's get into the next list. Through PayPal, I'm offering for $20 play your deck through League. I also give you an article about how to improve the list, and as well as some sideboard guides in very particular matchups. If you want to check out the link, it's in the description. Now, let's get back into the video. The next on my list is kind of a twofer. So I have two back-to-back decks that have 2 different variants on that I want to talk about. First one is the brand new Gruul Delirium that has been showing up. Doomwake has tried it. Soul Mamba Galid also has tried it. So there's 2 different versions. So Doomwake plays the Crater, which I think is a really good card for the deck. Giving your stuff haste, like your Beastie, Beer, and Missing Out, and the Fly Trap are actually very important to have haste. Even NT is actually kind of reasonable, just to get the discard, draw another card, put a counter on NT. Also, you can cycle it. That gives you an enchantment that increases your ability to get Delirium. He, of course, is playing 3 Traverses, 4 Fables, 4 Breakouts to get the Fear of Missing Out to give it haste. We have 4 Seed of Hope, help mill 2 cards, fill our yard up, get Delirium, so that's kind of nice. Mana base, though, looks pretty solid overall, like a basic Gruul aggro mana base with shocks, fast lands, pathways. He is playing 3 Traverses. I'm not sure about that. Typically, I usually like to stick at around 2 copies of it. But then again, I'm not really sure what I would actually replace it with, because you still want a decent amount of sorceries to be able to get your Delirium online. Right now we have 7 copies of that, and we have 8 copies of Instance, which I think is actually pretty reasonable. The only thing I think of is maybe you want more artifacts. I guess we have 8 artifacts. Then we have 6 enchantments. No, 10 enchantments. So I mean, it's kind of is balanced in that regard. Sideboard, we have 4 mites, 4 hate pieces. You can also get Graveyard Hate, which is the main piece you want to hate on. Mikolos is a little bit artifact and enchantment removal. 4 melees for the Rakdos Prowess matchup. 2 volleys, pretty good against Shredder. I forgot about Shredder. And Thing in the Ice, along with, Spirits and Fang. 3 Forges as a way to fight through mid-range and control. Hazoret for mid-range. 2 Hearses for Graveyard Hate for Phoenix. And of course, we have a free roll of a Jengatha. Now, a slightly different take on this deck. Let's get into that one. So this version, we're playing only 2 copies of Beastie, plus the 4 copies of Wicker Folk for artifacts. We also have 4 recruits as a way to give counters, disperse them as you target our stuff. 2 fly traps. It is a good card if you can get Delirium online. Otherwise, it's a very generic 2 mana or a 3 mana 2/4, which is not a very good card at all. You kind of have to have Delirium to make this card playable. 4 Bone Crusher Giants. It's just a solid removal spell, slightly, and then also a decent body. Fear of Missing Out because it's an enchantment, plus it gives you extra combats, which could close the game out. We have 4 Worms. I think this is in here mainly to help bridge the gap against something like Control, where you kind of have a recursive threat that can't be countered, which is kind of nice, and it has haste. So they can't even wrath it. So it's kind of nice. 4 Torture Towers, just because, like again, like the previous deck, you kind of have to have a decent amount of removal, because at the time, Rakdos Prowess was a dominant deck. We have 4 Fable the Mirror Breakers, which makes this deck a little bit more into a mid-range pile, along with the Worms, so then less of an aggro deck, but it's still, I think, aggressive enough. Kind of like how Gruul Boats is a aggressive mid-range deck, similar to this deck. We have 3 Wrenn and Realm Breaker to diversify our Delirium targets hits, along with the couple copies of the Battle. So those help with Delirium. But also Wrenn helps fill the yard up, which helps with Delirium. And a hexproof threat that's a land. It's kind of nice to have as a way post a Wrath. So it's better into Control and stuff like that. 4 Melees as a way to fight through Rakdos Prowess. 2 Abrades. I'm assuming this is a little bit of artifact removal plus another option for Rakdos aggro. 2 Spheres. Good against Lotus Field, maybe Phoenix and green. Especially since green, I guess, is a little bit more of cast a bunch of spells, but maybe it's still not very good, technically. 3 Hearses for Phoenix and Fang. We have our 1 Domini Raid as a way through to grind, draw extra cards. Good against Control, stuff like that. We have 1 Rampaging Ferocidon for Angels. Clothis for Control, Graveyard, a little bit of Graveyard Hate, stuff like that. A Hazard for mid-range and Control. That is the other variant for Gruul, like mid-range Delirium. And the other one is Gruul Aggro Delirium. But like I said, both of them are pretty aggressive for what they are. So next I have 2 decks, again, that are similar in archetypes, but they're different lists completely. So let's get into those. I am now offering Patreon and Locals content exclusive that includes sideboard guides, budget guides, exclusive videos, as well as other types of content. If you want to check out the link, it's in the description. Now, let's get back into the video. So, with the addition of the last set, Duskmourn, we've gotten a lot of Boros aggro decks, or auras, right? What we have not gotten is a Boros version. So that's what this deck is. Interesting enough, we have 4 heroes, which actually works kind of well with the aura sub package. Gets counters, if you kill it, it does a lot of damage to the face. 4 scavengers to target this to get another Valiant trigger, and also pumps it up. We have 3 Light Paws, just an amazing card in an aura deck. Weird Spice, we have 3 Storm Heralds in the deck. So we can get a bunch of auras ETB at the same time, get a bunch of scavenger triggers. That's kind of a nice way to pay it off. We have a couple copies of the Sheltered by Ghosts for a little bit of removal. 3 Slickshot Show-Offs as a way to, kind of just go big with all of our auras and smack face in the air. 4 Kamanus to give a counter to Hero, Scavenger, Pause, whatever you want. Plus it is an enchantment. We have Ethereal Armor. It's just the best pump spell. We have 4 copies of Consuming Fever as a way to give the creature +3/+3. At the beginning of your upkeep, put an -1 counter on it. So it gives him an initial gigantic boost, but it does make them smaller over the course of the game. Hopefully you end the game pretty soon. We have 3 copies of Demonic Ruckus, which is a really good card with Light Paws. Because you pawed it on 1, you played the Light Paws on 2. But this version, we don't technically have the 2-drop necessarily that gets hexproof, but Ward 2 is still a pretty reasonable thing to grab. Plus removal spell. We have 3 rescues to protect our Light Paws. And we have 1 Griff's Boon as a way to give our Light Paws flying. We have a Sellsword to sacrifice the hero or the Light Paws, smash our opponent's face, or even the Storm Herald. Sideboard, we have a couple Gravedigger's Cage for Phoenix, stuff like that. We have 2 Light of Hopes for enchantment removal. This is relatively good against something like Temporary Lockdown, which kind of gets most of our deck. We have 2 Red Cap Melees to fight through, of course, Rakdos Aggro. 2 more copies of Sheltered by Ghosts, also good against Rakdos Aggro. And any other aggro-ish deck. 2 Rest in Peace for Phoenix and Fang. We have an additional copy of Storm Herald. I'm not sure what matchup this is for. If you're the original poster of this list, please let me know why you would want the 4th copy. Maybe if you're expecting a lot of removal, show off is not as good, so you'd rather just have a card that potentially could just smack your opponent one giant swoop. That seems like a good argument, I suppose. 1 Hazard for mid-range, and 2 Screaming Nemesis for, I'm assuming, Angels, so as a way to stop them from gaining life. And you can close the game out, so it's kind of nice. So that is Boros Auras, or Boros Bogles. Let's get into the next list. So next on my list is a Selesnya Bogles deck. Now, I'm not really sure if you really need Mana Confluence in this deck. You probably could just honestly cut it and cut down on the cost from 217. But other than that, we got our 4 Shelter by Ghosts with the Light Paws, which is just the best creature. A Mire as the backup scout. And we have Scavenger to pump one of our Bogles creatures or our Light Paws. Audacity to give one of our main attackers Trample. So we have our removal spell with Shelter by Ghosts, which also gives our Light Paws Ward 2, which is kind of nice. Alpha Authority on our Light Paws to give it hexproof. Additional Warbriar's Blessing for a little bit of extra removal, in case we don't want to exile it if we expect a lot of another removal from our opponent. To fizzle this, it's kind of nice to have that as a backup plan. All That Glitters with our Ethereal Armor as a way to pump our main attacker. We have Boon to give it flying. Ice to help against aggro, where vigilance really matters. So we can attack still, gain life from the life link, and also still hold back a blogger, which is kind of nice. 3 rescues as a way to give our Paws Scavenger, maybe even a Mire, if they target it, they pay the 2 ward. You could then give it a hexproof and blow them out. We have a Cartouche to fight against like a Liliana the Veil type edicts. Not necessarily the Children's Edict type edicts. Sideboard, though, we do have 4 portable holes for the Rakdos aggro deck, 4 Invasion of Gomacon for mid-range decks or combo decks where you want to prolong the combo piece or their sweeper / removal, and later on flip it over, give counters to your stuff while also protecting your stuff. 3 Rest in Peace for Graveyard Hate, 1 Get Lost for a little bit of kind of catch-all removal spell, hits Planeswalkers, and problematic enchantments. 2 Swans for grinding matchups where you want to gain card advantage instead of maybe something like Scavenger in that matchup where the counters probably don't matter since they're probably going to remove the Scavenger like that, right? I'd rather have a card. That is it for the aggro video. Come back tomorrow, we'll talk about mid-range, and then the very end we will get into tempo. So, until next time, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Shout out to all my supporters, and if you want to see any other content from me, check out either one of these 2 videos and playlist. And I'll talk to you soon.